Okay, episode 31. Hi, I'm your host Lee Stewart. This is the Football Journals. I'm quite honoured today because I've got my first ever Scotland international in the house. I've got Mr. Bobby Clark. How are you, Bobby, first and foremost?
Very well, Lee. Thank you. Thanks for inviting me on. So I'm looking forward to it.
It was actually, this was set up through a work colleague of mine and somebody that you know through the golf course, Bobby. I'll give a wee shout out to Colin. Thank you very much for this, Colin. But you're living up in the local area, Bobby. We were just speaking about it. You live up in Lossy these days. You enjoy the scenery.
I love it. I love the scenery. I look out our sort of lounge window and I see the golf course, and then I see the Skerries, and it's a wonder. It's really we've loved coming back to Lossy. I feel when I was a youngster growing up, we would go to places like Millport, or Rossi or Arran for our holidays.
Yeah.
And so I feel now I'm in holiday every day, because Lossy feels like a sort of place we'd go for a holiday.
Good man. And you got a lot of time on the golf course, Bobby?
Yes, and I was in America for about 35, away from Scotland for about 35 years, and I didn't play golf. I never had time. I was too busy. But since coming back, I decided to take it up. So I'm not saying I'm good, but I love playing, and that's where I met Colin the Postie.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. He is actually a very good golfer.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
okay.
No, he's an excellent golfer. Much better than I am.
Okay, so from golf, that's your love these days. But Bobby, original love of football. You're a football man. Yeah, I'm just going to run through your clubs in Scotland, because we could go on. We'll go on to America in a little bit. But started off at Queen's Park. Bobby then went on to make 591 appearances for Aberdeen. Scotland international with 17 caps for Scotland. I'm right in thinking a boyhood Clyde fan, Bobby.
Clyde fan, still a Clyde fan. That was when I was young. So I saw them winning the Scottish Cup twice, believe it or not.
Okay, that's something you won't see these days.
No, I don't think Clyde are going to win many cups, but there you go.
And you actually played for Clyde as well.
I played. That was one of the highlights to finish. Craig Brown was the manager. And
okay, wow.
Craig was a couple of years above me at college, so I knew Craig quite well at PE College at Jordan Hill. So they were having a sort of goalkeeping crisis at the time, and I don't know if I added to that or not, but I was past retiring. But anyway, I went down and I played 4 games, and it's always, I can say I played for the team I loved as a youngster.
That was brilliant. That's brilliant. And then we'll touch on this a little bit later on, but you also had one single game for Forest.
Oh, no, that's when to go out. You win a cup final and you never play again. So that was a special day. I can tell you the ins and outs of that one later on if you want.
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely. So we'll always go back to start with the first question, Bobby. I'd like to know, how good a football player were you as a child? And what age did you realise you had potential to play football?
Oh, well, that's an interesting one. I was brought up in the East End of Glasgow, and football was your life. I thought I went to school to play football in the playground, So I went to East Bank Primary, and your whole dream was to get in the primary school team. We had a great team. We ended up winning every cup. We won the league and then the 2 other cups in Glasgow. So we had a really good squad. And anyway, it was quite funny. They had the tryouts, and I didn't ever see myself as a goalkeeper really at that age. I just played football. There was nothing organised. You just played up the park.
Yep.
And there was always games going on, so you just go up the park and and I always found that if my team wanted to win, I played what you call a back and goal.
Yes, I know what you mean.
So you were a goalkeeper, but you played out and you kind of. It would have been great nowadays because you use your feet.
It's very modern day, Bobby.
It's modern day, but that was in the East End of Glasgow back in these days. But you used your feet and you played. Then when you were the one that would go back and play in goals. So it was a bit of both, and so. But I always thought myself as maybe as a midfielder. It was a halfback in these days.
Yes,
It could be any of the halfbacks, right half, left half, or centre half would be one of with the position I thought. Anyway, we're having the school trials, and I was playing as a halfback. I think I was a left half. And as a trial was going on, Mr. McNaught was our he was our teacher. Then he took the team, and there's another guy, Jimmy Ruff, who had played. He was a man now, but he'd played for Arbroath, so we all thought they took the team. Anyway, it was going okay. I thought I was playing quite well. Then Mr. McNaught said he stopped the game and says, anybody else can play in goals? Because obviously he wasn't happy with the guys.
Yeah.
There was two teams playing. It was the trial. And it was this guy, Sandy Kelso. Sandy shouts, Clarkie's a good goalkeeper. And they didn't ask you, would you like to go into goal?
You were just put.
They just said, okay, Clark, into goal. So that was how it started.
Aye.
And I went into goal, and I made the team, and I was just happy to make the team. You were in the team. I would be one of the youngest in the team at that time, and then the next thing I made the Glasgow East team, and then the Glasgow under-12 primary,
Yeah.
And we had a great Glasgow East team as well. We won the Scottish Cup, at that age. So I think one of the reasons we won it was we had one really. I mean, he was an exceptional. You know how you have a really good player at that young level.
You always do.
It was a boy called Alec Willoughby.
Okay.
And Alec went on and played, he signed for Rangers, and then he actually finished up playing in Aberdeen.
Oh, okay.
And you end up, we had been at primary and playing in the primary select together. So anyway, that was where it began, and I get really excited.
Yeah.
And then the trouble was after that, I went to secondary school,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a rugby playing school.
Right. Okay.
So that was the end of playing for schools.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I had, so here I am, and I've got, how do I play? So somehow I think I talked all the guys to, why don't we put a team into the YM under 16 leagues? There wasn't like club leagues in these days at under 12, under 13, 14. The first, you played your school, and then after school it was under 16s and the under 18s. That was the only sort of age group teams.
Yep.
So here we were all, 12 or whatever, and we put a team in. The whole team went into this, the YM, Glasgow YM under 16 league.
Fair play.
And I remember in the very day of my 13th birthday, we lost 13-0 to a team called Peel Glen. There was two very good teams in the league.
Yeah.
So they won the league, I think, Peel Glen, but we lost 13-0.
On your 13th birthday.
On my 13th birthday. As I say, you couldn't write this stuff. And anyway, I played there for a bit, and again, you get a lucky break. I remember I would be about maybe 14, coming 15.
Mm-hmm.
Sandy Hills YM. We were playing in this game it was up in Springburn in Glasgow. And the ash parts, the gravel parts, no grass for the goalies in these days. You get skint knees. But anyway, we're playing, and our team gave away a penalty. And it's funny because every day, in these days, there was all these parts lined up side by side. I think up at that field, there was about 6 fields lined up side by side.
Yeah.
So what usually happens is a penalty every day from both sides that's watching
We'll stop.
are going to stop and look at the penalty kick saving. So anyway, I end up saving the penalty.
Yeah.
And little did I know, but there was the under-18 Scottish YM selectors
Okay.
were watching an under-18 game, and they all looked at they saw this goalie. So they decided to keep watching because they were looking for a goalkeeper. Their side almost picked, but they were looking for a goalie.
Mm-hmm.
And they watched the rest of our game, the under-16s. And they came up to our manager at the end of the game and said, does your goalie normally play like that? And he said, Mr. Jimison it was. He said, oh, of course he does. He's like, thank you, Mr. Jimison, you know. And they said, well, we're looking for a goalkeeper. Next week, would you release him to play in the bottom team in the under-18 league? Because they're playing the top team in the under-18 league. And we would get a look at him to see if we would take him for a... And that's how I got the trial for the Scottish YM.
Wow.
And it just shows you how you can be lucky that suddenly there was selectors at the game, the penalty was given.
Yeah.
And then I played the next week. We lost 2-0, but that was a good score seemingly for the team that was bottom. So I obviously must have done well and ended up. I'd only be about 14 or 15 playing the under 18s, so that was I suppose the start.
Yeah. That's
and then the Queen's Park also, they had schoolboy coaching.
Mm-hmm. Yep, of course.
And I went. They used to go to the schoolboy coaching, and they were Queen's Park was quite interesting. If you go back to the sort of late 50s, early 60s, they had actually 4 teams. They had their first team, then they had the reserve team, they called it the Strollers. Then they had the Hampden 11 that played in the Scottish Amateur League.
Yes.
And then they had the under 18s that played in the Scottish Youth League.
Quite a structure.
It was quite a structure. And that was going back before, Aberdeen wouldn't have had youth teams in these days. I wouldn't have imagined. Very few would. Because in that league, there was teams like Glasgow United, Drumchapel Amateurs, Kilmarnock Amateurs, and we had a very good team, again, at Queen's Park. Harry Hood, you said you're a Celtic man. Well, yeah. Harry played with us, Queen's Park. He played with, that's where I first met Harry. Harry was a good player, very good player.
Yeah. And
then he would have, if he'd stayed there, but he went to Clyde. Harry ended up going to Clyde.
Would you have been playing at Hampden at these early days at Queen's Park?
No, we'd play sometimes at Lesser Hampden.
Yeah.
And that was a good field. It was great for me because that was a grass field.
Yeah,
these days, up till then, I'd only played in gravel fields, And I thought it was great to play, and I went through very quickly. I remember they pushed me up from the under 18s to the Hampden 11. Then it was the Strollers, the second team. And then I was still at high school when I ended up playing for first team at Queen's Park. I remember it was season 62-63, so it would be New Year's. They used to play 2 games at New Year. They used to play New Year's Day.
That's right, yeah.
And then they would play on the second as well, so that you played 2 games back to back. Anyway, Queen's Park played on New Year's Day. I didn't play, but I was told to come with a squad. And then they told me they were travelling up to Brechin the next day, and they took me, and I made my debut at Glebe Park in Brechin. And we lost 3-1, believe it or not, but saved a penalty again. And I stayed in the team.
Yeah.
For the rest of that season, I stayed it right until I left.
Mm-hmm.
So I had 3 seasons with Queen's Park.
Enjoy your time there.
Oh, loved it. I loved it. It's funny. That's one of the games. I went back to Pittodrie there to see the Queen's Park. They played in the,
of course, not long ago,
Scottish Cup. So I went through there because I remember as a youngster playing at Pittodrie for Queen's Park. We were drawn against Queen's Park in the Scottish Cup.
Yeah.
Back in I think that'd be 64.
Okay. Yeah.
And
just before you went to Aberdeen.
Yeah. We drew 1-1 at Pittodrie, and then we drew 1-1 at the end of the replay at Hampden, but they beat us. They made it 2-1 in overtime, in extra time.
Yeah.
So that was, and Eddie Turnbull, who was our coach,
mm-hmm.
he then became the Aberdeen coach, our manager. And actually there was another boy, Davy Miller, who was a midfielder for Queen's Park that day. So when Eddie became Aberdeen manager, he took Davy Miller and I to join him at Pittodrie.
Yeah.
So
that's fascinating, Bobby, because it gives me a little bit of an insight. You know, I can read things, but hearing it from your point of view, I get a little bit of a different insight. Just kind of touching on what I suppose a question I haven't given you. What's it like?
Just to let you know, Lee, I'm going to come and sort your camera off your next
Sorry,
question.
yeah.
So just keep going.
No, you're fine. What's it like to play for a Glasgow team that isn't part of the big two? You know, it's a bit different, is it?
Well, I think I'd be one of the few people that ever turned down Rangers twice.
Wow. Okay, let's have a bit more on that if we can, Bobby.
Well, when I decided to you know, we were my third year at Queen's Park. We were up when Eddie Turnbull was the coach. We were really in a good position to get promotion to the first division. Then I think we were second in the league when Eddie left us in February. We'd just been beaten by Celtic just before he left, 1-0 in the Scottish Cup.
Yeah.
Anyway, but once he went, Eddie was a fantastic coach in these early days, you know. Prior to Eddie coming to Hampden, we used to run round the track and up and down the terracing. When Eddie came, suddenly we were all over. All the training was at Lesser Hampden. It was everybody had a ball and everything was with a ball. And he had me. I mean, this seems silly nowadays, but the ball would come back to me. Say it came back from my left back. I immediately was looking to throw it out to the right back.
Yeah.
But we didn't throw the ball out until Eddie came. You know, and we're suddenly playing, you know, 4-2-4. You know, gone was the old WM. It was just he was just way ahead of his time, Eddie. And anyway, but once he went to Aberdeen, I decided maybe there was a lot of folk had been talking to me. You know, both Spurs and Chelsea were in Sheffield Wednesday. I had been talked Cardiff City. They had all talked to me at that time.
Yeah, this is before the days of agents as well, Bobby.
This is the days before they usually talked to my father. You know,
yeah.
They got talking to my father, but I decided I was at PE college at Jordan Hill, trained to be a PE teacher, and I decided that I wanted to finish. I had 2 years left at college, so I was going to look. First of all, would I look at one of the Glasgow teams? So Rangers were the team that came on the scene, and then Partick Thistle. I remember Willie Thornton spoke. He was a manager there at that time, and then and Hearts were there. But Eddie was. It wasn't. I never really had been a Rangers supporter as a growing up. I just. I obviously talked to him. Scott Simon was the manager at that time. I remember going to his house, and he was very nice. But my love was to go back, stay with Eddie Turnbull. And Eddie said I could stay at college. He finished my 2 years at college.
Yeah,
and just come up through my holidays. So you come up for most of the summer up till mid-September, and come up again full time, you know, over the Christmas holidays, and then the same at Easter holidays. So, the very important time is coming in July, August, and a good bit of September. So I really got to feel part of the team, and then I also got to finish at Jordan Hill. And it was good at Jordan Hill because you were teaching and coaching and actually the lecturer that took soccer was a lad called Roy Small.
Right.
And Roy was he had been my coach with the Scottish professional youth team that we went to Holland and played in the European Youth Tournament in Holland.
Wow.
And Roy was one of the lecturers, and so he was very good, and so I got that. And actually Bill Dickinson, who sort of mainly took the squads for teaching rugby, he was actually the Scottish coach, the first ever, because they didn't have coaches with the Scottish national rugby team. But Bill Dickinson, if you look back, was the first coach. And I liked rugby because I told you I was at school. And they played rugby. So I played rugby every Saturday morning, and I played football every Saturday afternoon. And I played it right through until halfway through my 5th year. It was quite difficult because I had to make it. It was travelling with Queen's Park. It would be the second team I'd possibly be in at that time, and then I was
making the rugby as well.
with the rugby, and I had to make my heart was always in football. But I did enjoy rugby. So that was it. So.
Who did you look up to as a kid, Bobby? Any other football players?
Oh, it was Tommy Ring.
Yeah.
Outside left. Oh, Tommy was a fantastic... Because Clyde, if I go back to Clyde, in these days, Clyde had... Well, I can still tell you the team that won the Cup in 55. Hewkins, Murphy, Haddock.
Yep.
Granville, Anderson, Lang, Divers, Robertson, Hill, Brown and Ring. Well, you had Tommy Ring was a full international, Harry Haddock was a full international, and Archie Robertson was a full international.
Yeah.
So when you think of Clyde with 3 full internationals,
and
then the team that 3 years later they won it again, and this time they still had Robertson, Ring, and Haddock, but then they had added George Herd and Johnny Coyle. I think Coyle maybe went to the World Cup. I don't know if George Herd. George Herd then went to Sunderland. He was a very good writer. He started with Queen's Park.
Yeah.
And then he came to Clyde, and then he went to Sunderland. Had a long career at Sunderland. And Tommy Ring was still playing. Archie Robertson, and Harry. I mean, all really good players.
Yeah, yeah. As you say, at Clyde as well. When you look at, no offence to Clyde these days, but the stature of where Clyde are these days, to have 5 Scotland internationals playing for them at the time, it wouldn't be something unheard of these days, isn't it?
No, if they'd one international, you think. But anyway, I loved Clyde. I loved going to see Clyde, and Tommy Ring was my hero. He'd a middle shed, back in the days. He'd a middle shed. I remember. This is when I was at primary school, getting my dad's brill cream and putting the middle shed. But I'm afraid my left foot wasn't very good. But I loved Tommy was my hero. And then he went down to Everton and played very well for Everton until he broke his leg. And I think he actually came back to Aberdeen latterly but he was done by that time, I think, which was kind of sad.
Absolutely. So you got a move to Aberdeen, and we just kind of spoke about it. It was probably a management decision, helped you
Very much.
with Eddie Turnbull and things like that. Initially going to Aberdeen as quite a young man, how was it trying to break into that team, Bobby?
Well, I think the big thing is you and this is one of the great things with making a decision. If you could go on to some of these other the bigger name teams of that time, it might have been hard. But Eddie Turnbull had you for the last 2 years.
Yep.
So you knew that he wanted it, and he wanted to. I think he was at the stage where he wanted to change. Aberdeen had been struggling at that time. They had. That was the old 18 club. When he went, they were in relegation trouble in February. So I think so you felt you had a chance. I think when he came that first year, he gave like 18 free transfers. He just cleaned the place out. But John Ogson was there at the time, and John was a good goalkeeper. So he was the other goalkeeper when I arrived. So I didn't know, but I think Eddie had it in his mind that he was wanting to put a young team together. And anyway, so within about the first month, he sold John Ogson to Liverpool.
Yep.
And that sort of opened it up for me to step in. Now, would it have been better to have a little bit of time? Maybe, I don't know. But it was great that you were thrown in there as a 19-year-old, and then they signed Ernie McGar.
Yes,
and Ernie was a very good goalkeeper as well. He was great. So I had somebody to compete against, and that was. Yeah, so you certainly to be on your toes.
Absolutely.
But it was good. We had a really good team. The team that it was. I went there in 65, 67 we got to the cup final against Celtic. And that was the year the Celtic won the European Cup.
Yeah.
67, and the only time they beat us was in the cup final that year.
Mm-hmm.
Because the previous, I think we drew 1-1 at Pittodrie and 0-0 at Parkhead that year.
Yeah.
And that was great because I was still at college. That was my final year at college, and that was a good team. I mean, you had the sort of notable players. Well, you had Clark White and Shewan, and then you'd have Tommy McMillan was a centre back. There's a lad Jens Peterson, a Danish player, was very good. And then Francis Monroe, Franny was very, very good.
Yeah.
He was great. And, the old forward lines there. They had a guy, Davy Johnson, who came from Nairn.
Okay.
And Davy was a great player.
Aye.
2 feet, could hit the ball. And anyway, he got homesick. That's how he left. But because we lost a lot of these players at that time. Davy got homesick and he wanted to go back to Nairn.
Okay, that's interesting.
Because it wasn't because he wasn't playing. He'd already gone to Hearts as a 15-year-old and been homesick there and had gone back.
Aye.
And he came to us. And if you still go, if you go to Nairn, they've got the Dave Johnson enclosure.
Okay. Wow.
And then he went when he left us. He went back to Cali.
Yeah.
And I think he still scored the most number of goals ever in a Highland League's season or whatever.
Is that right? Yeah.
I'm saying 100, but I don't know if that was that. But Davy was. I mean, he should have been playing at the top level.
Yeah.
You felt he had the ability to be an international.
Just kind of touching on one of the names you mentioned there. We've had a few mentions of him because obviously he came and played at Elgin. Was Ali Shewan?
Ali, yeah.
Yeah. How was Ali captain at that point?
Ali was the captain. He was to be captain in 67.
Yeah.
He was the captain when I arrived. Ali was the Iron Man,
Yes.
Yeah, Ali was he was tough. He wasn't the silky type of defender, but he was a really tough. Jimmy Johnstone and Willie Henderson will remember it wasn't easy playing against Ali. He must have had a few bumps and bruises.
Absolutely.
But no, Ali was very good. I say that it was a good team. Jimmy Wilson, and then the Jinky Smith.
Okay.
And then it's funny because we had that team, and it was kind of dissolved. They dissolved it. They sold Jimmy and to Newcastle, and they sold Tommy Craig.
Tommy Craig, yeah, wow.
To Sheffield. He was only about 17, 18. They both went for 100,000. So we sold two of our best, and then they sold Franny Monroe to Wolves.
A lot of money.
So we kind of dissolved that team.
Mm-hmm. Would that have been when the likes of Joe Harper and that started coming into the team as well?
Joe would start coming into that's when they would go for Joe, and then Martin Buchan.
Yes.
No, we built another team.
Aye,
By 70
absolutely.
we built another team.
Mm-hmm.
It was because you end up with and Henning Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
Because Henning Bowl had come over from America. He was a big Danish, very good. That was a good team. It was a good team. The team that won the cup.
So we'll kind of go on to that, Bobby. 1970 Scottish Cup final. You're playing in front of 108,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
It's Aberdeen's first major title.
Mm-hmm.
Beating a very good Celtic team, 3-1 in the final. Joe Harper getting a double.
No, he got the one.
He got the one,
penalty.
sorry.
It was Derek.
He got
Derek
the,
Mackay got.
he got the double. Sorry, apologies. What's your memories of that day? Because obviously you weren't expected to win that day, were you? Being the strength of the Celtic team.
Well, he'd beaten them 2-1 2 weeks before at Parkhead. They had to beat us that time to win the to win the league.
Yeah,
officially,
And this is a year that Celtic have also reached another European Cup final as well, isn't it?
That was they were at the European Cup final again.
Yeah.
Actually, the next week, a week or so after that, they destroyed Leeds. They played that game at Hampden.
130 odd thousand. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it was. No, it was fun playing in front of the big. We'd played in front of a bigger crowd though in the '67 team when we played Celtic.
Okay.
That was 126,000 at the.
What's it like playing in front of 120,000 people, Bobby? Can you hear anything?
It's no different than playing at Falkirk in front of 15,000 because see a full stadium.
Yeah.
Whether it's 15 and that's all the stadium halls or Pittodrie. I remember in '67 we played Hibs at Pittodrie. There was 44,000. Wow. When I think about that, in '67 we played Hibs in the Scottish Cup. We played them at Easter Road and there was 36,000. We drew 1-1. Jimmy Smith equalised almost 3 minutes from time. We got them back to Pittodrie and it was great because I was at college. I had to sit exam. I had to sit an exam right after they actually moved the exam an hour early so that I could get. I sat it my own, so I'd sit it, and then I got up to Pittodrie, and there was 44,000. They were on the roofs. You ever see folk had climbed up onto the roofs behind the. It would be the King Street end.
Yeah.
It was amazing crowds at that time.
Mm-hmm.
For the cup, but no, it was I think we were pretty confident ourselves that team. If I think we had, who did we all? Well, I came into the team because I'd been out the team, and I came into the team when we played Clydebank.
Yes.
In maybe the second round,
Mm-hmm.
and we won 2-1. And we get booed off the field.
Wow.
It was a frosty, the ground was brick hard, was solid, maybe shouldn't have been played. And they had a wee lad, a wee midfielder, and he I think small people with a low centre of gravity can move around a lot more.
Absolutely, yeah.
And it was the time when they used to cheer when your team got the ball, and boo when the other team. Well, the Pittodrie faithful were booing when we get the ball and cheering when they get the ball. But somehow we got through. And I remember Eddie Turnbull when we came in. He said, "Well, you kept some of us in a job today." you know that. I always remember him saying that. And the next round was we played Falkirk at Brockville in away, and it was quite good. The Falkirk forward line that day, they had Alec Ferguson and Andy Roxburgh. That was their forward. That was their forward, and they were going well. They were top of the. It would be only the two divisions then, so they were top of the B division, sort of walking away with it. They were going, and the place was full up, but seemingly all our guys had the flu.
Okay,
and that's how Cup Tie Mackay got a game,
right?
Because Derek,
aye,
I don't think Derek would get a game if we hadn't had a lot of injuries in that game. So we went down there. I remember playing in a muddy field. Full house. It was very, very good atmosphere. That's what I was saying. It's almost the same as playing at Hampden. It was anyway. We won 1-0, and who scores the goal? Cup Tie Mackay. That was it. You know?
In the stars.
And then it was written in the stars. In the semi-final, they played at Muirton, down in Perth, and we played. We played Kilmarnock, and Kilmarnock were a good team of that era, very good team of that era. They had been in finals of European things, Fairs Cups and stuff like that. And again, it was an absolute full house. There was folk locked out at Muirton. It was a great atmosphere. And again, we kind of win 1-0. Cup Tie Mackay again.
Strikes again.
And then, of course, the final.
Aye.
And we'd played Celtic, just a couple of weeks before that at Parkhead, and we'd beaten them there. So that gave us a lot of confidence that we could win. That was that team starting to become a really good team.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Arthur Graham. Arthur Graham's first full game was when we played Celtic the 2 weeks before.
Okay. Yep.
And he was only 17.
Aye.
And he scored a goal that day at Parkhead, the league game at Parkhead when we played. So Arthur was, and he had no nerves. Arthur had no nerves. He just
played.
He just played. I would be much more nervous than Arthur was. Arthur just played, and he was very good that day. And Derek, and you had wee Joe, and that was what Eddie Turnbull made. That he played Jim Forrest right up the middle on Billy McNeil, because Jim was very fast and Billy was a wee bit slower, and he dropped wee Joe into just behind into the sort of attacking midfield role. And I don't know if everybody knows that Joe's a really good player, not just a goal scorer. He's a very good goal scorer, but a good player. He had a good head in his head, and he got the space. He got the space there, because we ended up playing a 4-3-3, whereas Celtic were playing a 4-2-4.
Yeah.
And Joe was getting a wee bit freedom in there and making things happen. And if you see the goals, he was involved in sort of setting up goals. And so that was, anyway, that team went on the next year.
Yes.
We lost the league the last game of the season by 2 points.
Yeah.
That was a good team. And then Eddie Turnbull left. And then
go through a couple of managers before Fergie, don't you?
Oh yeah, quite a few. That was a bit. If Eddie had stayed, I thought we could almost have replicated what Alec Fergie did. You know, later on, because they were both special. But they let the manager go, and then they let Martin Buchan go. They let Joe Harper go, and they let Stevie Murray go to Celtic. Stevie went to Celtic. Yeah, and Martin was the best defender in Scotland, no question.
Yep.
And Stevie Murray, I thought, was the best midfielder, and Joe Harper was the best forward. Yep. And the manager, Eddie Turnbull, was special.
It's your spine gone completely. So
and although we were second that next year again, but it was by 10 points. You know, we were a distant second.
Yeah.
Whereas the 70-71, we should really have won it that year, I think.
Anyway, very close. Do you know what? Can you remember what year you made your debut for Scotland, Bobby?
Yep, it was in, I think, 67 or 67, 68 season, I think.
Yep, I was trying to have a look around about who would have been in goals for Scotland at that point. Ronnie Simpson obviously didn't get much.
Ronnie would have been possibly before that.
Yeah,
he'd just come in for that little window.
Yeah.
In 68, Bobby Ferguson had been before that went down to West Ham. So that would be. Then Jim Cruikshank was around at that time. Hearts played with Queen's Park before me as well. That was a good. It was a game. It was against Wales. We won 3-2. It was just. I don't remember much about. All I remember, they didn't play Flower of Scotland in these days.
Okay,
they
right.
God Save the Queen. And
okay.
I always, when I think about that was. I feel like the guys now. They're so lucky now that they just one of the. I know it's a small thing.
No,
but it's a passionate thing about you're Scottish. You're not. You're. I mean. And there's nothing against the Queen. I had certainly. She's a great Queen, but. England used that as their national anthem, so why are Wales and Scotland? Because I love the Welsh national anthem as well when they play that at any of the games. But that's just, it wasn't. But it was just great that you played and you won, and that was fun. So
17 games for Scotland. Bobby, is there any that stick out in particular for you?
Well, there's a lot of good ones. I remember really my next one was against Holland.
Okay.
In Amsterdam, and we drew 0-0.
Would that have been team like Sir Johnny Rep and things like that.
Yeah,
and
well, no, Rep wasn't there then. They came in. You know, I got they held the Scottish, the European Youth Tournament, under 18 professional youth tournament in Scotland.
Okay.
And
that's something that wouldn't happen these days.
and it was great. But they gave guys that had been doing their coaching license. This was in 1970. And it would be like May of 1970.
Right.
And I was fortunate enough to be given the Scottish, the Dutch team.
Okay.
And that had Neeskens, Johnny Rep, Van der Kerkhoff, all these boys.
Wow. Yeah.
Rijsbergen. There was 5 of that team played in the World Cup, full World Cup final in 74.
Yeah.
And I sort of went with them everywhere, stayed with them. It was really great. As they got to the final, we lost to you wait to hear this. They lost in the final to Romania. In a game they dominated, but they lost in the toss of a coin.
Oh, that's...
They hadn't had penalty kicks even in these days.
No.
It was amazing. It was 0-0. It was played at Hampden, and Neeskens was our captain. It was a really fun.
Mm-hmm.
It was great for me because you watch how they played.
Yeah.
And Neeskens played like you'd call it a front sweeper. I think it would be a defensive midfield player.
Yep.
And he played that role, and it was great. And our section was in Aberdeen, and we played. I think we played Switzerland. Who else did we play? Oh gosh, my memory. Switzerland. I think Germany. We beat Germany, beat Switzerland, and then there was one other team. I'm blanking on it, but anyway,
no,
it was a really that was just a fun experience.
Yeah, aye.
So I
give you a little bit of the bug for coaching as well.
Yes, well, I had already done both my B license and my A license by that time. I did that. So I did my A license in 70. I did my B license in 68.
Yeah.
So Eddie Turnbull really encouraged us all to go there because he was one of the sort of
the educators.
Educators. Yeah. So Eddie would have been one of them. So I felt that was doing your license, and I always taught every afternoon when I came up to after I finished college. I would train in the morning and then I would teach in the afternoon.
Yes, aye.
And quite often the teachers, the afternoons would often be games afternoons.
Aye, okay.
And I would be given usually, I didn't know, some I did rugby, some I did field hockey, but mostly I was given a group to do football with, you know. Mm-hmm. And that got me started coaching, you know, thinking of coaching and getting it going. And that just, you were teaching all the time, doing sports. You're always doing sports.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when I was at Came Hill School in Aberdeen, I had a really good basketball team.
Yeah.
Yeah. My point guard, my creative guy, we lost in the semi-final. It was a wee school, Came Hill. We lost in the semi-final of the Scottish schools under 14 basketball tournament. But there was a lad, Kenny Watson, who actually went on and he played for Montrose, then he played for Rangers. he was my point guard, and he was my guard in the Came Hill under 14 basketball team that got. It was fun. But that was great. I think obviously I'd done my licenses, but I think because I was teaching, you learn to look at all sports.
Aye, absolutely, yeah.
And that was very, 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 very good. A lot of fun.
you find a lot of sports go hand in hand with other sports. It's
Well, no, they do.
Yeah.
Basketball is very similar, actually.
Yeah, a lot of hand-eye coordination, and it's
And the big thing with basketball, you're either playing man-to-man or you're playing zone, and it was very good for zones, working zones.
Absolutely.
and made you think. No, I really I enjoyed them all, and even in rugby, of course, I'd played at school, so I was fairly.
Mm-hmm.
But Jordan Hill was a great, if I think back to that time, I mean, as I say, Andy Roxburgh was there, Craig Brown was there, and we all, I think that's where we got our start. And then the people that did the coaching courses down at Largs, the SFA, well, they had Roy Small, the person who had told you was the football lecturer at Jordan Hill. So it's hard for me not to miss it. One of the best things that ever happened was going to Jordan Hill.
Yeah,
I think that was
that's your education as well.
Yeah, and that's where I met my wife. Also, she was a primary school teacher.
Oh, that's brilliant. That.
She was, because they did all the primary school kids there. So it was a good move.
Absolutely important place for you then, Bobby.
Yeah, it was.
Let's take a moment to thank the incredible sponsor that makes this episode possible, along with many more episodes of the podcast for 2025. This episode of the Football Journals is brought to you by Elgin City Football Club Director and Elgin City Women FC Director Chris Foot. Along with helping Lee keep the podcast going, Chris also works relentlessly as a director of Elgin City and the women's side, tackling various tasks and roles. In the words of former Football Journals guest Christopher Saunderson, if it moves, Chris Foot can get it a sponsor. Which rings true because this podcast is moving in the right direction, and alas, this podcast has a sponsor. You can follow all things Elgin City on various social media platforms to keep up with both teams' journeys this season. You can also check out episode 37 of the Football Journals, where Lee spoke to Chris about his life as a director, the progress of Elgin City, and his love for Manchester City, but, in my opinion, you can just skip over to that last part, if you know what I mean. But in all seriousness, thanks once again, Chris, for your continued support, helping us keep the lights on here at the studio and making bi-weekly releases of the Football Journals podcast possible.
So one of the interesting things I found out when I was looking at you is, Bobby, you didn't always play as a goalie for Aberdeen.
Oh.
Centre-back sometimes, played in defence.
It was one of these things that happened. It was a year I was out. The team Ernie McGarr was in. It was after we lost to Hibs badly. Something about 6-2 or something, 6-3. I think Eddie I think thought would just give me a wee rest, get me out the firing line, and put Ernie in. But Ernie played so well.
Okay.
And Ernie ended up getting 2 caps.
Right, through that.
So actually, when I get back in the team, actually, Ernie got capped that season, and so did I. Aberdeen had 2 goalkeepers that were capped.
Aye.
So Ernie was very good. And then and he was playing well, so I was playing in the reserves. But it was the start of one of the seasons. I'd hurt my wrist and I couldn't play. And then Martin Buchan had been injured in a car accident. Somebody else they were really short of central defenders, and I think the reserves were playing in the first team, and then I think the second team were going to get a trialist, but Teddy Scott, he took Teddy, great man in every way, but Teddy took the reserve team, so he said, just give us Bobby. Bobby will play centre half for us, because I quite often, sometimes when I'd been in the first team, the first team would get the Monday off, and then the reserves would come. And I would always come in and play as an outfield player.
Okay, yeah.
I love playing football, So Teddy just said, yeah, just give us Bobby. Bobby can play. So rather than just take a trialist that we're not really looking at, if they'd be looking at somebody. So anyway, I played, and obviously I played quite well, and then they kept me playing there because I think they had the injuries, and I didn't. It was I was playing for a little bit, and then I was enjoying it. I don't know where it would if it had taken me very far, but actually Ernie couldn't play the first team in a game at Paisley against St Mirren.
Okay.
And I had to go into the first team and playing goals.
Right.
And
Yeah.
at the end of the game, Eddie just came out and said to me, "You're a so-and-so goalkeeper from now on. That's your position." So I think I think he was a natural goalkeeper.
Aye.
And then because when Ernie came back from international, Ernie went back into the team. I went back, but from then on I was playing back in goal in the reserves.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was great in these days because the reserve league was strong in these days. This is one of the things with all these subs they have now with 8 subs. There's no reserve team.
No.
I would have hated to be a backup goalie.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes you'll see a third goalie on the bench these days.
I know.
I don't understand that at all.
It makes... anyway, I was so glad I played when I did. The time I was out the team, I was playing the reserves. And the reserve leagues was good then. And
Competitive.
we had a very good, I think, we're winning... We're either winning or second in the reserve league, and so that year out didn't do me any harm. There was a lot of good players playing with, and Teddy Scott was a very good coach.
Yeah.
So it was very, very well run with Teddy. So, but that was it. I look. When the Barton Buckens and these guys came back, I don't think they had any need for me.
So you played at Aberdeen under, at the time, a young Alex Ferguson. What was Fergie like when you first came in, Bobby?
He was good. Well, I get injured.
Mm-hmm.
I get injured in the pre-season game against Tottenham Hotspur.
Right.
And it was I broke. It was actually a bone there. I punched a ball with my right hand, and it was a big Spurs guy. Lacey was the centre back. I'd come up for a corner kick, and I got part of his head, and it was a thing, and that was me. I couldn't play for maybe about 6 or 7 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
That's when Jim Layton got his opportunity. So I liked Alec. I got to know Alec quite well because by that time I was taking we started Lenny Taylor and a lad Lenny Taylor.
Okay.
He played with Forres, Lenny, in the Highland League. He was a school teacher in Aberdeen, and he and I took the schoolboy coaching at Aberdeen, and that was fun. That was really, really fun. It was a learning time, and we used to have the under-14s with the under-15s and with the under-16s. The under-15s every Thursday night would play a game. Usually we'd take in an under-16 Aberdeen youth team from the youth leagues, and we'd play in the car park.
Okay.
And there used to be a little, because that's what we did all the training. And it was the only place that was floodlit.
Yeah.
It wasn't really floodlights; were just car parking lights all the way around it. But we thought it was great because it was the only place you could. There's no floodlit places back if you go back then. And the guys loved it. And anyway, there was a little sort of asbestos hut where Lenny and I would sit, and Fergie would always be there for this game, and he'd usually sit in the middle of Lenny and I, and Teddy would be stand outside Lena. There wasn't enough room for a fourth guy in the wee place, and because he had to go and run baths and do all that stuff. So it was great just listening to his thoughts, and that was Eddie. He wanted to know who all these players were on our under-15 select. Who's that one? Who's this one? Who's...
Yep.
And if you look back to the players that came through there, the Neil Simpsons, the Johnny Hewitts, the Neil Coopers, you know, there's a whole
a lot of them.
Brian Mitchell, Willie Faulkner, all came through of that era. And then I remember going up taking an under 15 team up to Elgin. We used to play a friendly against the North of Scotland schoolboys.
Yes, right.
And then, who do you think we found? We found Brian Gunn, and of course we found Eric Black.
Eric Black, of course.
It was played at Elgin, the game.
Wow.
And I remember going back and saying to Alec, I said, there's two guys that are really good. I thought their goalie was very good, and then there's this guy, Eric Black, was very, very good. Get them in next European game. And next European game was against, actually, I think it was Fortuna Dusseldorf.
Aye.
And they came in and they signed, and well, the rest history.
Absolutely.
When you think of all, but that was a great thing with Alec. You know, he really knew all the. He took an interest.
Yeah.
And then we really developed the young players as well, because obviously we'd had them at coaching. The under-15s would be twice a week. The under-16s would be once a week. And the under-14s would be once a week. And that was every day. So I would be training in the morning, teaching in the afternoon.
That's a lot.
And then I would be doing the youth thing. We usually start at 5 o'clock, you know, after school. So no, it was, but that was one of Alec's things. I think, and you know, he did this. They put these guys in the team, and then of course he did the same with Manchester United.
Yeah, class of
famous
92.
Alan Hansen quote: "You
Yeah.
won't win anything with kids."
Heap of rubbish.
So I think I was lucky, and they also, I think one of the things I'll give a shout out to Archie Knox, who is Alex.
Absolutely, yeah.
Archie really, he used to really work the young boys in the afternoons, and I think it was a pretty perfect setup at that time. We had all the young boys.
Yeah.
You know, we would have the young lads, and then, I don't think we missed many coming out of Aberdeen, and it was fun. And I think and the boys, I think, enjoyed it. They wanted to stay with Aberdeen at that time.
Yeah.
So, but before Alec, though, we had Billy McNeil was a very, very good.
Yeah.
We lost the league in the last game of the season with him.
And Billy had also put in a lot of the building blocks before Alec had came in.
Billy did a great job.
Yeah.
I think, I don't know, I haven't seen the quote, but somebody told me that he once said, he wished he had stayed at Aberdeen longer.
Yeah.
I think the drawback to Celtic
always come calling first for him. Absolutely.
He was a Celtic man. But Alec was special, if you think. I mean, he got St Mirren promoted.
He did, yeah. East Stirling
started there, then he went to St Mirren, pulled them up, and then he did the same with Aberdeen, and then he did the same with Manchester United. So, no, Alex, I was lucky. All the coaches, they were all different, you know. As I say, I thought Eddie. Then you had Jimmy Bond thrown. Jimmy's a lovely man. I mean, none of them ever get sacked.
Right. Wow.
I can see all the coaches that I was fortunate enough to work with, none of them get sacked. Jimmy just, I think, the team was in the doldrums, and I think they tried to convince him to stay, but he was a gentleman. And then Ali was Ali.
Yeah. That's it.
Ali was Ali. But the big thing with Ali, I think he rejuvenated the club. He wasn't like a tactical coach or a thing. He kind of motivated through the press and the fans and what he said, and that was Ali. Ali wasn't doing stuff like the other. You know, I would say the tactical best. You know, it would be Eddie and Fergie were the ones that thought most about the game.
Yeah.
Billy really controlled everything. Billy had a great presence in the dressing room, and so no, I was lucky. They were all good, and it was fun. So I liked them all. I had my moments where maybe they didn't like me, and maybe I didn't like them, but not very much, to be honest.
Brilliant, Bobby. So I've just got a couple of words written here, but it's a very interesting one because you'll have a better insight than anyone. 1978 World Cup. You were part of the squad.
I was.
A lot of hope for Scotland going out to that World Cup. Maybe built up by a man that I think doesn't get enough appreciation in for what he actually done for Scotland during that time. You know, he built us up a bit of hope and all, but what a squad Scotland had going out to that World Cup. Would you agree with that?
Yeah,
definitely one that could have competed.
Okay.
Sorry, there we
I
go.
think all the of that era. I mean, if you look through all the teams that I played in, we all had. I mean, if you even look at the 74 World Cup, you know that was a good team we had there. I remember I'd played with most of these ones. If Tommy Docherty had stayed, I think I would possibly still have gone. But it was because we'd played in Brazil's. It was their Independence Cup in '72. And I mean, we just lost to Brazil 1-0 in front of 130,000 that day. But you had Dennis Law and you had Billy Bremner. You had Martin Buchan. And then if you go back to the '78 team, you still had Martin, and it was just a lot of really good players.
Yeah,
perhaps it was a year too late. Because we'd gone to South America before the '78 World Cup. We'd done a tour to South America in '77, and I went with the squad.
Yeah,
and we played Chile. I think we beat them. Was it either 4-2 or 3-2? That was in Chile, and then we drew 1-1 with Argentina in Argentina, and they lost 2-0 to Brazil, but that team competed with the best teams in South America.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was. But I think if the World Cup had been played that year, they might have. And it was a wee bit. I mean, at the end of the day, we didn't progress because of goal difference.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
and actually drawing with Iran.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and then the team that beat us in goal difference, we'd beaten, and they lost in the final to the host nations. So. Yeah.
Ifs and buts in football.
Ifs and buts, and you can't.
No.
That's it. You just have to say, for some reason, we weren't good enough.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can. There's a lot of wee things. I think. I don't think they thought enough about how to keep the guys interested.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the pressure of being there. How do you've got to entertain. I mean, I know that from college teams. How do you entertain your team when you're on the road? You've got to keep them together. You've got to keep them. You've got to keep them excited. And I, because you went there. What did most of them do? A lot of the boys, they watch the television. Mm-hmm. Well, television was in Spanish.
Yeah.
So there was no TV. And then what else? You know, we'd take in a bus to go to training into Cordoba, and that would be about a 50-minute trip in, the 50-minute back. I don't know. And of course, they blamed the place. Wow, there was nothing to do. And they thought there was going to be a swimming pool, but of course that was winter when we were there. We were there in June. That was winter, so the swimming pool, there's no water in the swimming pool.
Yeah.
But these are things that if you'd been smart, you'd either ask them to make, because we would have thought maybe the Argentinians would have thought it was cold to swim, but that wouldn't have been cold for Scotland. We would all jump there. It keeps them occupied, you know. If they'd found a training ground, there was a training ground, but seemingly it was all bumpy. We never went to it.
Okay, yeah.
So it was just wee things. How do you look after your team, and can you take them to places? And that would be the. I think that also contributed to. It was boredom.
Yeah.
It was boredom. for some. For me, it was I was writing. I had to write a daily piece for the Evening Express or the Press and Journal in Aberdeen. So I was busy because I was always writing this thing, and so and there was no. I knew I was a backup.
Yeah.
So there was no pressure on me. So I really just enjoyed the experience. If I'd been playing, it might have been harder.
Yeah. Aye, absolutely.
So.
And then kind of just the tail end of your career, we touched on Clyde earlier on, but you had a wee appearance for Forest in a Highland League Cup final.
When was that? 84, 85?
1984, I've got written here.
Yeah.
We kind of spoke about on the phone last week. It was just a phone call, wasn't it, Bobby?
It's a phone call. I just got back. My wife and I had been in America. I'd been coaching over youngsters in America over the whole summer.
Yep.
So I get back. That'd be in September sometime, and the phone went, and it was Harry McFadden, and Harry said, my goalie, I think he said, my goalie's injured, and we've got a cup final against Bucky at Elgin, and this coming Saturday. This was a Sunday before. And I said, he said, would you like to come out and guest for us? And I said, gosh, I haven't played for a while, and I've been coaching. I'm fit enough, but I've not really handled it. I've been more coaching outfield players. I've not really been working with in goals. So I don't know if that would be such a great idea, Harry. I said, I think I better say no. Anyway, I came off the phone, and my wife said, who was that? And I told her it was Harry McFadden, the Forest coach, looking for a goalie. And it was a cup final. And he said, well, what did you say? I said, I turned it down because I said, I feel I'm a wee bit old. She said, would you like to play? I said, I'd love to play, but I don't want to let them down because I've not been playing. She said, well, he's got no one else really, has he? And I thought, well, I suppose if I look at it that way, from that point of view. So anyway, he said, go and call him back and tell him you'll play. So I called him back, told him I'd play, and then Fergie somehow got knowledge of it, and Fergie says, why not come in and train with us for the week? Start handling the ball. So I went in and trained all week, and we won 1-0. I didn't get too much to do. It was who was it? They had a couple of guys played that actually had been Aberdeen boys.
Okay, right.
In the youth program, I remember one. There was two a wee forward and a big defender. So anyway, it was Raymond Perry, I think, was the defender, and George Stevens was the striker. I remember the first time my ball got, George is jumping in front of me. And we used to call George Windies.
Okay.
And I said, behave yourself, Windies, And we both laughed. And then we won. Ronnie Dunbar scored the goal. And it was, we stayed with my wife's sister in Elgin. And it was fun. It's a great way. But my record is 100% winning record.
100% winning record. Just a little question I've kind of been thinking of as I've been speaking to you, Bobby. Was there ever a point in your career where you wore gloves? Because obviously you started your career.
You wore these little, it would be wicket keepers' inners.
Okay.
For the inside, the wicket keepers' gloves. It was just cotton.
Right.
They were just cotton gloves. They weren't nearly as good as these things they have nowadays.
Yes,
they're really good. But no, it was. If the ball was dry, you'd always just use your hands, and then if it was wet, you'd, and if it was really wet, you would put on a double. You'd put 2 cotton gloves in, so it would absorb the.
Yeah.
That would be what we'd use.
Okay, that's interesting because I know that obviously initially at the start of your career that just keepers in general did not wear gloves. It wasn't a thing, and then probably by the early 80s, that's when really
the gloves came in.
really started coming in,
Yeah.
gloves and things like that, you know.
Sepp Maier had these big, huge gloves. The German goalie, he was the one I always remember having these gloves. I remember going to watch. We were at the same training camp just outside Nuremberg. And I remember going to watch their goalie practice, Bayern Munich's goalie practice, and he had the big gloves. These look good.
How did I get a pair of these? Okay, so I probably say it's probably quite a big subject, so we'll try and condense this next bit, because I know we could probably do another podcast on your time in America, Bobby, because there's so much to it. You've been college systems, you've coached hundreds of thousands of players over your time. How long did you reckon you were coaching all together in America for?
Well, I had 9 years at Dartmouth College. It's an Ivy League school, very good school.
Yeah.
And then I was at Stanford for 5 years. And Notre Dame, they came for me when I was at Stanford, and I went up to. I went into the Midwest, so I'd been in the New Hampshire, that would be the Northeast, and then I went away down to California to Stanford, and then back to the middle, just not far from Chicago, 90 miles from Chicago was Notre Dame.
Yeah, and these are all huge sporting schools.
Dartmouth would have been the least of the big sporting schools, but Stanford and Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Notre Dame is huge. I mean,
the basketball programs and things like that.
The football gets every home game gets 78,000.
Yeah,
to watch it, and the basketball will get about 9. They'll call them ice hockey teams, and we had a lovely little stadium. Very nice. It would hold about 3,000.
Yeah.
So I loved them all. Notre Dame, I would have said Stanford as well. I mean, some of Tiger Woods was at Stanford in the golf team when I went there.
Yeah.
So, it doesn't get much bigger than Tiger. When I think Nike came and offered him $40 million, I think he maybe reckoned he didn't need a Stanford degree.
No, I don't think so.
So that's a good start.
Bobby, you mentioned kind of just before, you reckon about over 50 players that you've coached have went on to play in the MLS. Is there any names that kind of stick out for when in your time in America that was, even if it's even not kids that you've coached, kids that you came across in your time in America that went on to big things?
Yeah. Oh no, there was quite a few. For me, the two were two boys I took from New Zealand, from the under-20 teams, and one was Simon Elliott. Simon was very good. He played in the MLS, and then he went over, played with Fulham. He was starting midfielder for Fulham, and then he got really bad ankle injury, did about 5 surgeries. So he finished earlier there than he maybe should. He was there for 3 years, but he only played the first season, really, because he had to keep getting the surgeries. And then there was Ryan Nelson, was the under-20s New Zealand. He was very, very good. He ended up with
Hearts, is that right?
with
Blackburn
Rovers, and so he went there, and both Simon and Nelly, Ryan Nelson, were in the World Cup, the New Zealand World. Ryan was the captain of the team. He was very, very good. Both very, very good. Good players, good guys. It was. They would have been the ones that possibly would people over here might have known. They certainly should know if they know Blackburn Rovers, because he was the captain for about 6 years. Yeah. And then he went over. He's now an agent, I think, still working out of America. So. And Simon's actually one of the assistant coaches with the current New Zealand national team.
Yep.
So
that kind of ties in nicely, Bobby, because you were actually the manager of New Zealand yourself, 1994 to 1996. Is that right?
2 years. Yeah.
What's it like being in charge of a national team, especially one like New Zealand? Because your games aren't You can't just go on an hour plane journey to go into the next country. Sometimes you're flying for quite a bit to go and play other teams and things like that. How do you even go about watching players? Because players are all over the world who play for New Zealand.
Well, not in these days.
Not in these days, okay.
It's funny.
Right,
That was
interesting.
the start was actually, we had one lad that was playing in Germany. That was the only one. No, my guys, I took them a tour of South America. Actually, one of the games we got hammered by Uruguay, but we played. It was before the South American Championship. We're playing. Uruguay wanted us to come in and play. We already played Turkey. We'd played Paraguay, and we'd played Chile, and we were playing literally with all guys that were part timers. It was the Highland League Select.
Aye.
It was great, and we actually, in front of 35,000, we drew with Uruguay 2-2.
Wow, that's a big
That's one of the highlights of my career. When I think about it, that was an amazing achievement. When I had policemen, teachers, joiners.
Did you ever find yourself doing a Jack Charlton Bobby and trying to find grandparents that were New Zealand or anything like that?
I never thought about it at that time. I was just when I went there, they didn't even have a national league.
Okay,
they didn't have a team the way they now have in that plays in the Australian league because they've got a team there. And in these days, they had 3 regional leagues. So when I first went there, I looked at each region. I went around each region, and I got the best players. It's 24 best players. We played a trial game.
Yep.
And I did it with each of the regions, and we picked the best team from each region. Then we brought all the regions together, and we played. We played a 3. It was a great idea. We played every day. We decided. Then we came up with a squad.
Wow!
And it was great because Simon hadn't been picked either for their 17s or their 20s. Ryan Nelson hadn't played for their 17s or their 20s. No. If you can believe that. And here they're on. And I mean, after the first rounds of the World Cup, and it was in South Africa. They picked a team, they picked the team of that, the early rounds.
Yep.
And Ryan, of course, was in one of the MVPs of the. He was a very good player. Yep. I won't name who, but I named them to a few players, people over here, both, and they came to watch Simon when he was playing in the MLS final. They didn't think he was good enough, and then. They also with Nelly, with Ryan Nelson, they said he didn't think he was good enough. Yeah, I never bothered. I just said, well, I'd give them, and they obviously found their way not badly. It was quite good. So. No, it was fun. It was the same, and I loved actually when I was in Zimbabwe. It was Zimbabwe that made me decide that I wanted to really coach.
Yeah,
because that was a great experience just for the year.
Mm-hmm.
And then they tried to get me to come back, and same with New Zealand. I'm maybe blowing my own horn here, but I decided that. We're leaving, we're going back to America. The chairman that hired me, he had left, and I don't know if I would have worked with the new person that came in.
Yep.
So I decided I was going, but I got the award for the person who'd done the most for New Zealand soccer in the past year. So I let that sink for about 3 weeks, and then I said, I think I'm going back.
Going back to America.
So after that was 2 years was a good experience because you're playing against quite good teams, but we're punching above our weight. And I also got a lot of kids quite a lot of kids started to go over to America. Simon came over, Nelly came over.
Yeah.
I took another 2 came over. to Stanford, and then other teams started to see New Zealand as a place where they produce really good sportsmen in New Zealand. In all sports, obviously, rugby we know of, the good cricketers. I remember when the Olympic team, we lost in goal difference to qualify for the Olympics to Australia, because Australia at that time were in Oceania. They're now in Asia.
Yes.
But anyway, Australia went to the Olympics. We didn't, but that was a really good tournament there. It was because I worked with every team. I worked with the full team, the Olympic, that's the under 23s. I worked with the 20s, and I worked with the 17s.
And your coaching and your football apple doesn't fall far from the tree. I couldn't get that out there. Daughter and son both involved in football.
Yes, yeah.
Your son played in the MLS himself.
Yeah. He was what they call a two-time All-American. It was great. They both played for me.
Yeah.
The youngest one, that's the youngest one, played at Stanford and for me, and he was a two-time All-American. Good team. His team was a very, very good team.
Yes.
He was a good player. Because the first year he was in, before he got his injury, he was one of the 5 players for the Rookie of the Year award.
Wow, yeah.
He didn't get it, but and then he'll be the youngest. My daughter's in the middle. She's a coach. She coaches. She's coached at the college level. She's actually coaching, the assistant coach at Pomona College with the men's team actually last year.
Right. Okay.
So she's a good coach. She has. She's got a A license in America. She got and then Tommy, the oldest one. Well, he's a doctor, but he became a doctor because he's a failed soccer player. But that was his. But he was a good player too.
Brilliant.
He played for me at Dartmouth, so I was lucky enough to coach both the boys, and they both went to good schools. Jamie went to Stanford, and Tommy went to Dartmouth. And Jenny went to Dartmouth, so they both. She was good. They're all good. She was quite a good field hockey. Jed could play most things. They all played things. So that was... No, I think America was good. It's a good place to bring up kids around a college campus where there's a lot of different sports. And also they realise that sports and academics go together. So they concentrated in both.
Yep.
It's easy to get here to sort of get sidetracked into one or the other, you know.
Absolutely, Bobby. Before we get into the last couple of questions, I'm just going to do a little bit for the people listening. So if you're enjoying listening to us, you want to watch us, you can subscribe to our Patreon. Brian will leave a little detail thing after the episode finishes, tell you how you can go about signing up to that. Give us a little follow on social media, YouTube, Spotify, TikTok, the whole shebang. Feel free to get in touch with the show. I'm actually going to start up an email for the show so people can send in questions and things like that at the same time. Last couple of bitties, Bobby. I've got a brilliant fact on you here, and I don't know, like you possibly did know this at the time, but you once held a world record. It was briefly a world record for about 6 months, but it was actually a British top flight record for about 40 years of longest time without conceding a goal in top flight football in Britain. 1,155 minutes, so works out about 10, 11, 12 games, something like that. It wasn't broken until Edwin van der Sar actually broke it in 2009. Did you know at the time that was a British record? No.
Nobody. There's no computers in these days.
That's what I thought.
Nobody had any idea. I knew it was. There's actually another game thrown in that nobody ever knows about. We played Gornik Zagreb. All the other games were the 12 games. I think were all league games. But then we played a friendly against Gornik Zagreb, who were a good team of that era.
Yeah.
And we beat them 5-0. They had lost in the final of it would be the Fair Cities Cup or the UEFA Cup or whatever it was.
Yeah.
The year before, we were really good that night. I had nothing to do anyway. I had a really good defence. That was a good. That was Martin Buchan. It would be Tam McMillan, Henning, and Jim Hermiston. That was a very good team, and I think they always give the goalkeeper the credit. But to be perfectly fair, it was a very, very good team.
Yeah.
To be honest.
Yeah. I always remember when Van der Sar broke that record, and I always thought 12, 13 games is massive. It's, as you say, it's not really shouted about back then because there's no internet. You know, the papers possibly didn't even pick it up at the time and things like that. But it's a massive thing these days. One of the other facts I'm going to throw to you is you're third on Aberdeen's all-time appearance list.
Yeah.
Do you know who the two above you are?
Yeah. Big Alec and Willie.
Aye. Played with both of them?
Oh, yeah. Great. Both of them were great. I was lucky. I mean, as I say, I played. But I just think, who's your I don't know if you're going to say who is the best players you play with, but I mean, how do you split Willie Miller and Martin Buchan, you know?
Yeah. Aye.
And Big Alec was pretty special. I was very lucky. I played behind. Both of these guys were great. Yeah,
absolutely. So I broke away from a format for the first time in 41 episodes for you, Bobby, because I didn't want. I normally ask my guests to name me the best 11 they've ever played with, or the best 11 they've ever coached. There's tens of thousands of players that could be on your list, you know. So what I've done is I've written down a few names, and I'm just going to give some word association from players you've either played with or against in your career. Just give me one word or a couple of words about the player. So Alex McLeish.
Great. I mean, you don't get any better. I don't know how you rate them, but you don't get better than Big Alec. And actually, Tommy McMillan was very close as well. And even in between that, you had Willie Young.
Okay. Yeah.
Willie went to, but no, Alec was special. He's a great guy too, not just a great player. He's just a very good guy.
Jim Layton.
Jim's great. Another. I mean, Jim is. So we golf every so often. He's on. We have this group that plays these scrambles round. We have about 5 scrambles. Jim's there. He's on. We have the Skype. What do they call it? Skype, not Skype. What do they call the calls?
Zooms.
Zoom calls. Yeah. He's on at the Zoom. No. Good, great goalie. Great reflexes. Brave as a lion.
Aye. Wee Jinky.
Jinky Johnson. Oh, Jimmy is just amazing, actually. I don't think, and it was completely natural. You know, when you talk, we go back, our under-12 team that won the
Glasgow Cup.
I remember he was playing for Lanarkshire Roman Catholics. Imagine that's where they split it up down in the south, down in that area. I remember wee Jimmy being carried off. He was frozen. It was one of these wet days, lashing puddles all over a gravel field, you know. But Jimmy was just a lot. He's a lovely lad too. Very not bigsy at all or anything. Aye. And he was lucky they had Jock Steen that could handle him.
Yeah.
Because I think that would be Jimmy's hardest.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just been handled. So, but no. You couldn't have a bad word with Jimmy. And just, you didn't like... But when you play against Celtic of that era, you always had to take, how did you handle him, you know?
Yeah.
In the cup final, you talk about the one we won, the 70. You know, George Murray did a really good job, and we always had a double cover. Martin was great at being a double cover on Jinky.
Sandy Jardine.
Sandy was very good. Sandy was he was a very, very nice guy, a good guy, and was a huge part of of Rangers. I don't know if I played with him just as much or was in teams just as much, but I was in for quite a few squads, and I just found him. He wasn't a Bigsy type. Neither him or wee Jimmy were Bigsy at all. They were all very, very, very good people.
Yeah. Kenny Dalglish.
Kenny, well, he played his first international. We were playing Belgium. It was at Pataudry. It was a Euro qualifier. We won 1-0, but Kenny came on in that game.
Mm-hmm.
He came on the second half in that game. So that was the start of...
Kicked it all off.
But when you think about the back in these days, I remember when he against Holland, I think that in Argentina, he beat or he equalled Dennis Law's caps record.
Yep.
But see, back then you didn't have as many games. You didn't have subs. So it was. I mean, I think Dennis just had 55.
That's not a lot, is it? It's not.
Not by modern standards,
absolutely.
but back then it was.
Yeah.
You know, that's what I say. There was no subs. You weren't putting in hundreds of subs. You'd maybe have, to begin with, it'd be one sub. You know, then it would go to two maybe. And you didn't have all these leagues. They have all these league games now. You have 2 games now on these things. Back then, it was you played with your team on a Saturday, your club team, and you'd join up with the team on a Sunday. You'd play on the Wednesday, and you'd be back with your club team.
That's the way it worked.
The way it worked then. So I think the teams get more training together now, which is good. It's good, but I think a lot of guys, folk will put people on at the end of games to give them. Even in Scotland, the last game they put in the 2 young boys right at the end, and you never get a chance to do that. So that goes down as a cap, you know.
I feel it dilutes it down a little bit.
I feel it's exactly what. It was what it was when you were there. That was, you're quite happy with that.
That's it. And then the final one we're going, who's a bit of a mythical figure, it seems. And I just want to ask if you came across him in your career, was Jim Baxter.
Yeah, my first international against Wales was Jim's last.
Yep. What was Jim like? Because he's
nice.
He's a bit of a legend in Scottish football.
He's a legend. He was just a very confident, very confident player. I get some of the stuff he did. He was a great passer of the ball. Now, he was your hard-working grafter, and I think. I think somebody once said that all the managers that signed him all get sacked. Because I think he was hard to. I don't think he bothered, but he was just a great player.
Yeah.
But he didn't. I don't think he. Well, it was like in the Wembley game, the 3-2 game. He's playing keepy uppy, He's playing keepy uppy where I don't know who it was. He was wanting to score more goals, get more goals, score more goals.
Yeah.
But Jim was happy to
play keepy up on the halfway line.
Yeah. That was Jim was
an entertainer.
And but they all it was hard. I think it'd be hard to manage, but very talented.
So it just touches on nicely the last couple of questions, Bobby. Can you name one player who you reckon is the best player you played with in your career?
Too many. Far too many. You've got... They're all different too. Wee Joe, Stevie Archibald, how do you start to split? Who's really good? A Drew Jarvie, who's giving you best return for your bucks? There was, as far as I say, Martin or Willie Miller.
Can't split them. No,
it's far too many, and they all had. Just say I was lucky enough to play with so many really good players. I wouldn't. I don't want to start singling them out. They're all different. Every position is different, know.
That's it.
I think your Arthur Grahams and they are great players.
That's it. And I also think on the back of that, Bobby, it's the beauty of football. It's a game of opinions. What I think's a good player, you might not think is a good player, and vice versa, and things like that, you know. So I respect that in having too many to name. Is there anyone that you played against that sticks out? Any strikers that used to give you a particular difficult time? Anyone that was quite physical at the back, or...
Yeah, there's a whole lot of guys who were tough to play against back then, and guys that folk wouldn't think of. From a physical point of view, I would say Alec Ingram at Ayr United.
Big lad.
And Alec played with me at Queen's Park, and I loved it. He was one of my pals, but he used to hit the crap out of me. And at the end of one of the game, I said, Alec, why did you keep banging into me? He said, well, Ali said, I know you two are, this is to Alec. Ali McLeod was the Ayr manager at that time. He says, I know you and Clarkey are pals, he said, but I want to see you hitting him. So he said, that was my instructions. I said, you definitely follow instructions. You did it well. But we always usually win, though. We always usually won, but he was, I could laugh at it. But no, there was a lot of, and obviously skill-wise, you know, you're talking about your Jimmys and your Willie Hendersons. You had two wingers that could really play of that era. Were exceptionally good. Kenny was Kenny. You know, yeah. Kenny was very good. But no, they're always just good challenges. To play against. I'm just trying to think of who else. There's a whole...
All players that brought you on as a player as well, Bobby. Would you agree with that? Playing against players like this brought you on as a player.
Oh yeah. You playing against good players and tough players was. I remember, gosh, it was Marshall and McFeet at Airdrie. God, you knew you were playing a game when you were playing against Davy Marshall or the big Willie McFeet. I think it was. God. They were something else, and then who was it? It was and after that it was Jarvie, and what was the laddie's way? He went to Hearts. Oh gosh, I'm getting old here, forgetting. He was a very good player also. He went to Hearts, a long career. That'll come to me, but
tens of thousands of players from your career you'd have to remember, Bobby. Yeah. So, and the thing is with Scottish players, there are similar sounding names as well. So there's a lot of Johnsons, there's a lot of Willies, and there's a lot of Micks.
Willie Johnson, there's another one.
There you go, yeah, exactly.
Start to bring them up. There was this
a lot of Millers. There's a lot of you know, very common names. So, Bobby, I'm very interested to hear the answer to this next question. Huge career. You won Aberdeen's first ever Scottish Cup, first ever league. I'm not sure if it was their first ever League Cup in '76, but
no, I think it was their second. I think they'd had a League Cup, just one of the early ones in the 40s, 46, 47.
17 games for Scotland. You managed national teams. You've brought through hundreds of players at college level. You've played in important games. You've held records within British football. What's your proudest achievement?
No, I think obviously all the things we won were really important. I think I would say that the league, the Scottish Cup first of all, and then I think it was 3 cup finals, and then we won, one lost. So the one you won, 3 League Cup finals, and 1 we won, 2 we lost. And we're runners up. The biggest disappointments was losing twice the league in the last game of the season with Billy McNeil and with Eddie. And then obviously we lost the league another time, but it was by points. But then obviously winning the league was possibly, that would possibly be the cherry from my playing career. Yeah. I don't think there's any question about that. Coaching, there was loads. You know, we won quite a lot of league titles. You know, when I was with the universities I won, and then winning the national championship, because first of all, you've got to qualify from your league.
Yes.
It's almost like the European Cup type thing, or the Champions League. You qualify, and there's 48 teams qualify every year, and then you've got to out the 208 or whatever. So you've got to then, and once we're runner-up when I was at Stanford, and then we won it in 2013. That was special, winning, because it was great, because each of the 3 universities I'd gone to had been down in their luck before. I loved that. I loved taking a team that was down in its luck and building them. I think that was maybe one of the things I did. I just enjoyed the challenge of that.
Mm-hmm.
So it was good. I think one of the other things that was the proudest things is the number of my former college players that are now coaching at college.
Okay, yeah.
I think that's really special, because they've all, you must have made it so that they thought coaching was a good gig, you know.
Yeah.
And they've all done really, really well.
Yeah.
You know. So.
Yeah. Obviously, the information you're passing on is pretty golden, then, Bobby.
Or
because
maybe they thought, I don't agree with all that stuff. I know how to do it better. So you can look at that from depends which side you look at that from. So
brilliant. I always start off with the same question, finish on the same question. My podcast, Bobby. If there's a penalty that needs scored to save your life, and you can pick any player in existence to take that penalty, who would take that penalty for you?
Joe.
Yeah.
Joe Harper.
Yep.
Joe, ice cool. Joe loves it, and he can clip it. I mean, he's very, very good.
Mm-hmm. There's a few different ways he's putting away that penalty.
Yeah. And, he can hit them hard. He can place them. He can chip them. No, Joe is a very, very good finisher. There's not many better than him.
Yeah. Top man, Bobby. Really enjoyed the last hour and a bit. It's been a fantastic.
Yeah, how's my time? I better be quick, because I'm on the tee.
You're on the tee.
In an hour.
Thank you very much for your time, pal.
No, it was my pleasure, Lee. Thank you for inviting me.
It's good to look back sometimes, mate, isn't it?
Yeah, it's great. I've really enjoyed it.
The Football Journals is now on Patreon. If you sign up on Patreon for just £5 a month, you can get access to our upcoming guests and the chance to ask your own questions, the ability to watch our podcast with full video exclusive, audio only on all other platforms. You can get your episodes earlier than anyone else, sometimes a few days, sometimes a week. You will get your episodes earlier than everyone else. Chance to request guests of your choice. We will do our utmost to get them on the show, if obviously within reason. I can't go asking Cristiano Ronaldo on the show. And one bonus episode per month. There's already a bonus episode on there. You'll get a further bonus episode every month. Sign up today at patreon.com/footballjournals, capital F, capital J. That's sign up today at patreon.com/footballjournals, capital F, capital J.